It is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It saved my life, and without it, I definitely would not be here. And that is God's honest truth. And that is something that should excite you, is the fact that something as simple as putting on some stripes or a uniform and a whistle and running up and down a playing surface, if that doesn't excite you, then I don't know what does, because as I am trying to excite you about it, my heart's pounding. I've got goosebumps because, man, what officiating has done for me and what it has given me is a new life and a new opportunity to be successful. And that's where I want to excite and elevate, to educate, get to know your officials, communities. We're human. We're people. We're fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, uncles.
The exciting part and maybe the elevating part is understanding the meaning of this avocational profession to the people who do it. I say it often about myself. I'm not me without officials. I'm just not. That's the God's honest truth. I mean, I have an amazing family. I have the best parents in the world. I have an incredible sister. I have, friends that are awesome and godsons and all of this stuff. But if you stripped officiating away from me, part of me would be just dead in a way. I mean, I honestly wouldn't be who I am right now in this moment had it not been for working with officials and continuing to work with officials. If you're considering it ever, you get the best seat in the house. Like anytime you officiate any sport, you are in it. It's the best way to stay involved with something that you love, that gave something to you, to give back to your community, all of that stuff.
And when I tell people that I do this for the beer after the game, what I mean by that is I do it for the friendship, the conversation, the hangouts, getting to know people outside of officiating. And so there's two places that you learn how to officiate, and that's bars and in the car, right? Driving 2 hours to and from your game, you're going to talk your sport. You're going to get home from your game and you're all going to meet up at a restaurant or bar and you're going to talk your sport. But not only that, you're going to build you're building friendships, and you're just getting to know each other on a whole different level.
As we were having the conversation about starting this podcast, my initial thought, because I'm kind of like this generally, was, why would somebody want to listen to that? And then he's like, I've heard you and Nate talk for however many years, and it's such good stuff. And he goes, not only is it a way for you to talk about the thing that the two of you love the most, but it's also an opportunity for two best of friends to be able to see each other once a week or however many times a week while we're filming, because it is something that, Nate, as my right hand when we were working together, he was somebody who, and we'll get a little further into this in a second, but he was someone who really revitalized my career as I was at the end. I was at about the 19-year mark when Nate and I started working together. And he was somebody who, forced me out of my comfort zone, and somebody who really challenged me and made me really have that passion again for what I was doing and stay focused on that.
And now, episode 28, Letter Z, Zebra. Join hosts Dana Pappas and Nate Acosta on the final episode of Season 1 as they discuss Zebra and reflect on a spectacular 28 episodes of the From A to Zebra podcast.
Welcome back to the From A to Zebra podcast. I'm Dana Pappas here with my co-host Nate Acosta. Today's a little bit different as we are in our final episode of our first season of From A to Zebra. And as we've gone along, I know, crazy. I think this is episode 27, 28, somewhere around there. We had a couple of duplication of letters. So for those of you listening in, there still are only 26 letters in the alphabet, but we just had some bonus sessions. So as we've gone along here, one of the things that we realized we never really did was talk about where this came from. Why are we doing this From A to Zebra podcast? I know throughout the episodes we've probably touched on it a little bit, but as we wrap up this season and get ready for season 2, one of the things we really wanted to do was share our stories and share why zebra is important to us, why the stripes are important to us. So this is our effort in the last episode of this season to really talk about that.
Yeah, what a great season. I mean, we've had some amazing guests from NFL to Major League Baseball to hockey, Major League Hockey, NBA, NCAA, football, basketball. We've had administrators. The list goes on, and it's been a really cool journey this first season. One, sharing with all of you, the amazing things that we do on the officiating side, not only on the administrative side, but also, on the playing surfaces. And so it's been really cool. And man, I can't believe that we're on episode 27 or 28, maybe 29. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I lost count.
Yeah.
And I think, Nate, it's been great. We've had high school officials, we've had professional officials, we've had kind of everything in between. And the lessons we've learned have been incredible. And I think that this has been such a good opportunity. And for those of you who haven't listened in to all of the episodes, do it now, because there is some lesson to be learned in every single episode from A to Zebra. So I really do encourage that. And this isn't just geared toward people who do officiate. It's anybody who watches sports. It's anybody who's curious about those adjudicators and arbitrators within athletics and the role that they play and the things that they do behind the scenes. And those who have been with us for this journey kind of know that we haven't talked a lot about it, the positioning and mechanics and rules, and we kind of, get there sometimes, but that was never the focus. So this has been a great adventure. To be able to do it with one of my best friends has been one of the coolest things ever. And to be able to continue to do what we love, even from 2,000 miles away from each other, has been really special. So it's been a great ride. We're looking forward to season 2 already. But, we really wanted to get into having a conversation, the two of us, to talk to you, our listeners, our viewers, depending on where you're tuning in, about why we've done this and why we'll continue to do this. And certainly if you're watching, if you're listening, if you have ideas for shows, if you have content you'd like us to explore or guests you'd like us to try to get on the show, let us know, because we want to improve every day. That's something that we're both big on in our lives and officiating and everything that we do. And certainly it applies to this podcast.
Yeah. So just to kind of piggyback on why we got this started, when Dana and I worked together at the New Mexico Activities Association, every morning, my office was located at the front of the building and hers was located at the back of the building. And I usually got there early. I wanted to do all the extra stuff before the phone started ringing and emails started coming in. I would get there about 6 a.m. and Dana would roll in about 8 a.m., which, she would also stay till 8 p.m. when I was leaving a little earlier. Her first stop every day was my office. And whether she sat down for 2 minutes or 2 hours, we had a conversation every single day about how we were going to improve officiating, whether it was that day, whether it was the next week or the next 6 years. We had that conversation every single day. And when she took the job at the NFHS, obviously she moved to Indiana and I stayed back here in New Mexico. And those conversations continued, just not as often. And it was over the phone or every once in a while after a Zoom meeting or something that we had, we'd stay on and discuss other things. And, our producer, Ed, was listening to one of our conversations one day and was just like, you guys need to share what you're actually talking about. It does no good when it's just the two of you bouncing ideas off of each other. And so that's kind of how this podcast came to be, is we wanted to share the things that we talk about on a regular basis on how we can improve officiating and what kind of steps we need to take so that we are, one, every single day getting better, and two, giving the world of officiating something that they can use moving forward.
Absolutely. And to that end, Ed, our producer, is my husband. And as we were having the conversation about starting this podcast, my initial thought, because I'm kind of like this generally, was, why would somebody want to listen to that? And then he's like, I've heard you and Nate talk for however many years, and it's such good stuff. And he goes, not only is it a way for you to talk about the thing that the two of you love the most, but it's also an opportunity for two, best of friends to be able to see each other once a week or however many times a week while we're filming, because it is something that, Nate, as my right hand when we were working together, he was somebody who and we'll get a little further into this in a second, but he was someone who really revitalized my career as I was at the end. I was at about the 19-year mark when Nate and I started working together. And he was somebody who, forced me out of my comfort zone, and somebody who really challenged me and made me really have that passion again for what I was doing and stay focused on that. And I think that for anybody who's in any professional setting, for anybody who officiates, when you are at that moment where you kind of feel like the spark's fading a little bit, you need somebody to reignite that flame. And that was 1000% Nate in my professional career. It was just like he had me see things in a different way. And I think that Ed, being my husband and hearing, having the insight as far as all of our conversations over the years, he really understood how important that was, that, Nate and I both believe in giving back to the profession or the avocation. And this is just another way for us to do that. So I think that it's important for those of you listening or watching, this is a huge part of our hearts. It's a huge part of our lives. We both have different stories that we'll get into in a second as far as why it's so meaningful, not only to us, but to other people who are involved in it, because our stories are going to be kind of similar to other people. And I think that when people can understand the passion that exists within officiating and the fact that people are working very hard to perfect their crafts. Nobody's doing this kind of half-heartedly. The ones who care about it are giving it 100%, and that's really been the focus of every letter of the alphabet to date, is talking about all of those different elements and how they affect not only individual officials, but the officiating community or officiating family as a whole.
Yeah, so let's get into kind of our backgrounds. I'll start with mine, or I'll start with my current situation. I am a Division I women's basketball referee. I work in 7 different conferences, 2 coordinators, and man, was it a dream to referee at this level. Obviously, my roots started back in youth league basketball, 8-foot goals and kids that, ran with the basketball like a football, and it was one person pushing me to try the next level, and then the next person pushing me to try the next level, and eventually being able to reach the goals that I've been able to. Definitely comes with a lot of help, a lot of encouragement and support from not only family members but other officials, and of course Dana has been my biggest supporter. But it's one of those things where Zebra is kind of my livelihood. It is what I am. As you can see, I have black and white stripes behind me. I have black and white stripes tattooed on my arm. Everything I have, from shirts and things, have black and white in it, and that kind of was an identity. It became my identity, and it became who I am as a person on and off the basketball court. And so officiating has been a huge part of my life. Really, let me see, 2002 really is when it kind of started. Right after I graduated high school. I think a lot of times what happens is you grow up playing sports at all levels, or from elementary to middle school to high school. And from the time that you're walking and running, you are participating in some kind of activity. And what happens is, if you're not in that top 3% that are getting recruited and are going to play at the next level, your organized sports ends just in one day. An entire life, 10, 15 years of just organized, going to practice every day, being coached, getting yelled at, having to run laps, all that goes away, and you start to lose who you are as a person. And I think that there are a lot of high school athletes out there right now that possibly listen to this could, relate to the fact that you're not going to play at the next level, and you're going to have to find something to do that fills that void. And for me, and this is a personal story, for me, it was the negative. Didn't know, I needed that adrenaline. I needed that excitement and that fun. And for somebody who was really disciplined in high school and coming from a very strict family, and I followed the rules. And after high school, I didn't have my identity anymore. I didn't have sports. I didn't have that to fall back on. And I kind of just fell into this wrong path of addiction and alcohol and drugs and all the things that I think you do you're trying to fill voids. And at that point in my life, it became apparent that I needed something more than that. And so, yeah, I was officiating at that time already. I had already started officiating, but it really wasn't anything. It was just a way to make a little extra money to, continue to go out and party, honestly. And so I had dropped out of college. I really had no direction in where I was going. And so it was a gentleman by the name of Robert Nunez, who at the time was kind of, he was a coordinator of the basketball league, the city basketball leagues. And so he happened to actually be my middle school basketball coach. And he kind of got me out to officiate some rec league stuff. And he kept telling me, he goes, you know what, you need to just sign up for the New Mexico Officials Association, go referee some high school basketball. I think you can do it, And I was like, you guys wear pants. I'm not wearing pants. I just want to wear shorts to these games. I'll make my $15, work 4 games a night and get out. And so I don't know what it was, but he kind of pushed me to that. And I showed up to the first meeting, and it was all over from there. I refereed that season. I refereed 120 middle school C and JV games and 1 varsity game. I remember that first year I worked 1 varsity game. And at the end of that season, and I'm still, mind you, I'm still struggling. I still have those demons that I'm fighting. At that end of that season, I had made some really good friends in Brian Salazar and Julian Salazar and Candace Aragon, Luis Alceda, Tony Armijo, Clark Evans, and those guys and gal. I remember Julian, Robert, Lewis, and Brian were all going to Chris Rastatter and Bob Schofield's referee camp in Tucson. And they said, oh, you know what, come on, you're going to go with us. And I said, wait, what? I have to pay to go referee? Why do I want to spend money? I'm trying to make money. And they said, well, it's going to be good for you. You just need to go. And I remember going to the camp, and we check into the hotel, and it's the typical, you guys know that if anybody's ever been to an officiating camp, everybody's wearing polos and golf slacks and golf shorts. And, I'm just like, man, everybody looks the same, and everybody walks the same, talks the same. And so we go down to the meeting, and there was a presentation. It was called The It Factor, and the presenter was Lisa Jones, who, fortunately, I'm able to work side by side, and so she gives this presentation, and I remember listening to the presentation, and there were presentations that followed. I just remember thinking, I want to be one of them in the front of the room, not because of what they had done in their officiating career, because they were, 1, obviously passionate about what they do, but 2, they wanted to give back to people like me. And so at that moment, that's kind of when the wheels started turning for me. And so we get out, and the next day, or I can't remember if it was the next day or that evening, we go out and we referee games. And I'm reffing a game, and at the end of the game, I see this person, and I don't know who she is. I refereed in New Mexico for an entire season and had no clue who this woman was. And she comes up to me and she goes, hey, you're a pretty good referee. She goes, I'm Dana Pappas. I'm, the commissioner of officials of the New Mexico Officials Association. She goes, oh, yeah. I've semi-read your emails. And I mean, I've gotten a million emails from day one to now, but now I can put a face to the name. And so we started chatting, and she goes, you know what, Nate, you have it. And I kind of looked at her, and I just had no clue what that even meant, other than from Lisa's presentation, and I didn't think it was me. And so she goes, I see you becoming a Division I basketball official. You have it. And at that moment, something even clicked even more. It was one of those things where I knew that I wanted to do this the rest of my life, or as long as my legs would take it. But that I wanted to dedicate my life to officiating. And that was the day that I also turned my life around. Everything changed. Came home, I, cleaned up my act. Everything just fell into place, and life just seemed to kind of, I finally found that void that I was missing from not being able to play high school sports. And we're talking, this is years after high school, we're talking 3-4 years after high school. And so It's one of those things that, officiating means so much to me because of the people that I've met, and one, because it saved my life, truly saved my life, but two, the people that I have met and the opportunities that I have been given through officiating, careers. Obviously, my friendships, my best friends are all referees, and of course my amazing boss and best friend and Dana. And so when I tell you that it is our identity, it's my identity, that's why. When we are out working a game, if you're listening to this and we work games together, and when I tell people that I do this for the beer after the game, what I mean by that is I do it for the friendship, the conversation, the hangouts, getting to know people outside of officiating. And so there's two places that you learn how to officiate, and that's bars and in the car, right? Driving 2 hours to and from your game, you're going to talk your sport. You're going to get home from your game and you're all going to meet up at a restaurant or bar and you're going to talk your sport. But not only that, you're going to build you're building friendships, and you're just getting to know each other on a whole different level. So when I tell you that I do this for the beer after the game, that's absolutely, from start to now, that is my officiating career in a nutshell, and why I do what I do.
Man, that's such good stuff, Nate. And I've been so fortunate because I've been able to see your career kind of from the beginning to now. And anybody who knows me knows that the officiating profession and the people who are in it, there's no better sense of pride for me than seeing people succeed. And, being able to see you over the years get different accolades and move up the ladder has been such a point of pride for me, because I know how hard you've worked. And I know that, for those listening, I remember Nate, when he was officiating in New Mexico, he wanted very early on to become a leader and found those opportunities and created opportunities for himself. And he was, helping to mentor officials and helping with assigning subvarsity officials and running for offices to try to get more involved. And I think that people sometimes feel like there's certain officials who get things kind of handed to them. But what they don't understand is those are the people who are working their tails off behind the scenes to create those opportunities. And Nate was a born leader in that way. He was somebody who always sought out those opportunities and made sure that he would be the person in the front of the room. And seeing him become a clinician and do all of those things, it's such a cool thing, because I know what the evolution of Nate's career has been, and so many other officials along my path. I guess that segues kind of into my path. So I actually consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world, because I started working at the New Mexico Activities Association right out of college. Like every college graduate, I had a degree in political science and Spanish. Don't ask me why I chose political science and Spanish, because not a real valuable degree in a lot of ways. But anyway, I had that piece of paper and started applying for jobs everywhere, trying to find something. Had applied for the job at the NMAA like in April of 97, and honestly kind of forgot about it because I probably had sent out like 80 applications to different places. End of June 97, I get a call from a woman named Kay Miller asking if I would come in to interview. And I'm like, sure, I don't know what the job is, but absolutely, I'll interview. Interviewed for the job on the 29th of June. 1997, and started working on July 1st. So the turnaround was very quick. Never thinking in a million years that it was going to become my life, that it was going to become my passion. Several weeks after I started at the NMAA, there was this officials clinic, and I didn't know anything about anything at that point. And I'm at this clinic and I'm getting yelled at by people like, where's my card? And I'm like, what's a card? Like, there's just all these questions and I haven't gotten my rule books. I was like, do you need rule books? Like, I no clue what I'm doing. And it was very, very quickly that I realized that this is a group of people who need help. This is a group of people who need support. This is a group of people who just need some attention. And I was like, all right, I can do that. I think I've got this nurturing instinct. Yeah, when I started, I think there was a pool going around that I wouldn't last 6 months. And 25 years later, I was leaving the NMAA. So I guess if there was a pool, I should probably collect up on that money at this point. But started as the secretary to the Officials Association and did that for 7 years. And then there was a transition in directors of the NMAA in 2004. And a gentleman by the name of Gary Tripp became the most pivotal person probably in my professional career from the standpoint of I actually had a job offer on the table from another organization at that time, and I was ready to go. I was just like, this is crazy. I love the officials, but I can't continue to work these 80-hour weeks. It was, I was working on my master's. I had gone back and got my master's in sport administration. I was just worn out. And Gary called me one night and he asked, if I would stay. And I was like, no, I'm done. And he goes, well, what if you were the commissioner of officials? And I was like, oh, well, that just kind of changed the scope of my decision. So I stayed, and Gary, I owe so much to him because he saw something in me that I didn't really see in myself, and he took a chance. I've never officiated, not a single moment of a single game in any sport, but I've had the passion for officiating and for officials, and Gary took a chance on me. I was under 30 years old, I was a woman, and I had never officiated, so it was like 3 strikes to start out with. And I think one of my, my favorite stories, I tell it all the time, was 2004, I get this promotion. I am on top of the world. I'm like, all right, I can start making a real difference for these officials. I go to my first ever National Association of Sports Officials conference in Washington, D.C. I walk in, and at the time, there weren't a lot of women in that particular group. And I sat down, I'm feeling really good. And this man turns around and looks at me and he goes, man, it sure is nice that they're letting their secretaries come to this thing. And I was like, you son of a, I was so mad. And in that moment, I was like, okay, I know I can do this job, but I know that because of the fact that I'm a female in a male-dominated field, I'm younger than everybody in this room by like 30 years. I've never officiated. I'm going to have to prove myself that much more. And it became I'm a very stubborn person. You can ask my parents. I had to prove myself. And, I ended up being the director of officials in New Mexico for over 17 years. And everything that I've done in my career has been in service of officials because they're an underrepresented group who sometimes don't get the voice that they need to have. And I think officials over the years understood I may not know everything about rules and mechanics and all the sports. I know that for a fact. I don't have the mental capacity to know all of that, but they knew that they had somebody that was always going to fight for them. And that was kind of how I've built my career, is fighting for officials and making relationships, because as Nate was talking about, those relationships are everything. And as you get into the administrative side of officiating, they're even more important because we have to work together. Collaboration and officiating is something that is absolutely critical and imperative. And being able to rely on, so many of the guests that we've had on this show have been people that I've met along the way and people who understand my philosophy of giving back and paying it forward to officials and letting their voices be heard. I thought really I was going to probably stay at the NMAA forever. And then in 2021, the job for Director of Officiating Services came up at the NFHS. And it was like, that's the dream job. 1000%, that's the dream job. So I put my name in and my application in, and I was hired. And I think I was a little surprised by that, but it was one of those things that if I was going to leave, it was going to be so I could advocate for officials on a bigger scale, because my reach was limited in New Mexico. And yes, I was working with NASO. I was on their board. There were things that I was doing to kind of import some of that into New Mexico, but the opportunity to be an advocate and support for officials across the country, that was the only reason I would leave New Mexico. And it's been something that now I'm, over 3 years in already, which is crazy. And it's been absolutely incredible because, I'm hearing from officials every day who just, sometimes just need an ear, but they need to know that people have their backs. And I think that that's been something that has been important in my career, is letting officials know, like, I've got you. Like, I may not be able to get the end result that you need, but I will make sure your voice is heard. And I think that that's been something that's been really, really important. And, at the NMAA, I was so fortunate. I had 2 assistants my entire career. Jeremy Hernandez was for the first 10 years, and Jeremy is now an assistant director at the Florida State High School Association, and he's absolutely amazing. And then when Jeremy left Florida, Nate came in and certainly, like I said, reinvigorated a career that I was a little burned out at that time. So, it's easy to get a job and think that it had everything to do with you. But I know in my heart that the reason I am where I am is Gary, Jeremy, Nate, and this amazing support group of officials that everybody hears me talk about officiating family. That officiating family is why I have the job that I have. It's the people who have been that support to me and who have understood my vision and understood my philosophy of what we should be doing for officials. So I think that, that this job, any accolades I've received, it's on the backs of everybody else. Like I understand I'm the one who has the job, but I also understand that I didn't get here by myself, and never once have I thought that. So that's kind of my journey. That's how I got to Indianapolis, and really kind of where Nate and I intersected, and where we've built this amazing friendship and just been able to work together so well over the years and continuing on, even though we're across the country now.
And I think it's just when you meet someone that has the same passion, and you meet somebody that just as your mind, goes 1,000 miles an hour, theirs is going 2,000 miles an hour, and then vice versa. And so it's been a wild ride. And I challenge those, to go out, and if you're passionate about this stuff, actually put it into action, because trust me, there is no dumb idea, because trust me, we have done some of the dumbest things ever to try to improve officiating and to try to retain and recruit, from TikToks to silly videos to, just whatever we could do and whatever ideas. And so if you're out there and you're thinking that you want to get involved and you want to help officiating, just do it. I can tell you that getting the job at the NMA for me was probably one of the greatest accomplishments that I ever had. And that was only because I didn't have a college degree. As I told you in my story, that was just not in my cards. From the day that I graduated high school, my life changed to something that I never imagined it to. And because of that, I was never able to get that piece of paper. And the New Mexico Activities Association, the NMAA, took a chance on me because of the work that I had put in prior to and the passion. And they saw something in me that I didn't think anybody else did. And so I challenge you to give back, because it will open doors. You don't have to have a college degree to be successful. And I truly believe that, I have been successful in my lifetime, and that is because of my passion for this and the zebra stripes and everything. Because I don't know that would have happened. And for those of you that are in high school or just graduating, and that's my target focus, because I want to share my story, and this is the start of it. There's very few people that have heard my story, and now it's out there to the world, because I want to be able to impact some of you high school kids that aren't in that top 3%, because there's so much more after high school, especially in the world of sports, especially on the officiating, whatever sport. And here's the deal, I wasn't a basketball player. I was a high school football player. I got cut for my high school freshman team because I was too short and I was too small. My freshman year I was 5'3", 98 pounds.
I can't picture you being that short ever, just so you know.
Currently I'm 6'2", 200. So that is kind of, it was a very late spurt, but there is opportunity. And so I played football, and I officiated sports, baseball, softball, football, volleyball, I think track and field. The only sports that I think I didn't officiate that New Mexico offered was soccer, which the year that I got hired at the New Mexico Activities Association, I had registered to become a soccer official.
Yes, you had.
And of course, spirit and swim and dive. Yeah.
Wrestling. Did you do wrestling?
I didn't do wrestling. No.
Okay.
So I did not officiate wrestling. So But that's, and obviously as you officiate, you're going to get more opportunities in in certain sports, and basketball was it. And currently I get to work, and I failed to mention, I still referee high school basketball. And I still referee Division II basketball in junior college. I am not above that. I will continue to referee high school basketball as long as the high school association will allow me to work a game here and there. But ultimately, I get to work for some amazing people: Violet Palmer, Patty Broderick, Randy Campbell, at the high school level, Jess Martinez, and every coordinator truly, and I tell you, every coordinator truly wants their officials to be the best. I think we are sometimes too hard on our assigners and our coordinators and our administrators. And I think that you just, they're in those leadership roles because they wanted to give back. They wanted to do something for officials. And so, we can sit here and not like the games that we get and not and be upset about the opportunities that somebody else got and I didn't get, and vice versa, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, their heart is in it. And I challenge you to just appreciate what they do, because it's not easy, because I have served in those roles, and in officiating, I've also lost more friends than I've gained friends. And that's okay though, because in my heart, I know that eventually one day these people will understand that, it wasn't out of spite, it wasn't out of favoritism, it wasn't out of anything other than we have to get better and we have to improve and we have to just build our circle, our officiating circle, because right now it's dying. It's a dying breed at a scary rate. And that, I think, for people like myself and Dana, it scares us. And we're trying daily to figure it out, and with other leaders around the world. And it's not easy. It's not an easy task. And hopefully this podcast is something that's helped.
Absolutely. And I think, it is easy to be angry at your coordinators and supervisors, but I think that when people understand that you need to give them a little bit of grace, because what they're doing it is not an easy job to be. It's like officiating in the sense of you're always going to make people mad. The decisions that you make, you're trying to always think of the greater good. You really are. And to think in such a holistic way and to really try to make sure that everybody's happy, and knowing that you're never going to make everybody happy. Just like when Nate blows the whistle, he's going to make half the people in the arena mad. It's much the same when you get into those supervisory and coordinator and administrative roles. You're always going to make people mad. But I think knowing Nate's story and knowing my story, and sometimes people don't understand why we get so emotional about it, because it is something that's such a big part of our heart. So when we talk about letter Z and what the stripes mean to us, Nate and I are both people where it means everything to us. It's 100% a part of our DNA and part of my story. Nate's told some very personal stuff about his. I went through a 6-year battle with infertility, couldn't have children, and have always called the officials my family. And I think that became more poignant as I found out that I wasn't going to be a mother. So every ability I ever had to nurture went straight into officials. And I remember talking about officiating family a lot. And I was told by somebody who I, thought should understand a little bit more. I was told, the officials aren't your family. You have to stop saying that. And I was like, well, no, they actually are. The officials' family has been there for me through every high, every low. If there was a death in the family, they were the ones there to pick me up. If there was a, failure in my life in some way, they were there to pick me up. And on the other side, anytime something good happened, they were the ones there celebrating the loudest. And I think for somebody to try to tell you who your family is, that if they don't know, they don't know. And I think they don't understand what a supportive group of men and women and really, truly good people officials are. When I get, and sometimes even at my job now, I get very frothy and very angry sometimes when I'm like, gosh, why aren't people caring about this the way that we care about it? Like, what's wrong with them? And maybe it's just because they don't understand. They haven't been through those, taken their lumps a little bit and really had to go through those struggles and the tears and the, and the laughter. There's just so much of it. And, This morning, I got a text message from one of my former officials about a postseason assignment that he had received. And that means everything to me because, Nate always used to tell the officials in New Mexico, if you get, hired into a level, get a postseason assignment, you need to make sure Dana knows about it first, because the worst thing ever was I found out about it through the grapevine. So even though I'm 4 years removed from that job, I still hear from officials in New Mexico telling me about it. And it just makes my heart so happy. It makes my heart happy knowing when Nate gets postseason assignments and being able to work at that level. And I get super teary, and people are like, why, it's a basketball game, why are you crying? And I'm just like, well, because it's Nate. I've been able to see him grow into this profession. And I think that having this group of people who you've just experienced life with, you celebrate hard for them when they reach those moments. And on the other side, you can't just be there for the celebration. You got to be there when they take a hit too. You've got to be there to catch them when they fall. And I think that that's the importance of understanding. We've talked in a number of episodes about mentorship, but understanding all those shoulders that you stood on to get where you are, you have to make sure that you preserve those relationships, because if you fall, you're going to need them there. And if you've forgotten that, and you've forgotten your roots, and you've forgotten that foundation that you were built upon, it's going to be a lonely road. So I think that it's important to remember, not only pay it forward to the next generation, but to remember the generation before you. So I think that that's an important part of officiating. But I think for Nate and I, it's been so emotionally deep for both of us because of our circumstances, as far as how Nate got into officiating, and for me, how I've kind of persevered through really hard times as far as personally, and how the officials family has really been there to lift me up.
Anyone that says that this is not a family can kick rocks. I mean,
I agree.
It's man, and I remember the day that Dana told me that she was told that, and I remember being so mad, because absolutely this is a family. Like, especially when we step onto those playing surfaces, the only people that are going to support one another is each other.
That's all you got.
If that's all you have, and if that's all you got, if that's not family, I don't know what is. And we spend so much more time with each other as well. I mean, I can tell you that in the last, 15 years, I've spent more time with officials than I have with my family. And that is a fact. And so this is a family, whether you are listening in Massachusetts or Oregon or California, the people around you are your officiating family.
And anytime I get to go somewhere else to speak to officials, if it's Pennsylvania or Texas, it doesn't matter. Anytime I get to talk to officials, I'll always tell them, you're part of my family now. And they're probably like, who is this crazy person? But I think that when we talk about the stripes, what do they mean to us? Why did we start this podcast? It's because, both of our identities are just so wrapped up in officiating. And I love that. I definitely lucked into where I am as far as starting the job at the NMAA as young as I was, but there's not a second that I've regretted that. There's not a second that I've gone, man, what if I would have taken a different path? Because that path ended up, no matter how I got there, it ended up being the right one. And to have almost 30 years of just serving officials, it's awesome. I can't imagine any other thing that I'd rather be doing. And has it all been easy? Absolutely not. I mean, I remember 2 years in a row for state basketball. One year, Nate and I had worked each 112 hours in a week. And then the next year, this is how sad it was. The next year, our goal was, okay, we got to be under 100. And I think the next year we worked 98 hours in a week, and we were so excited. But for us, it was just part of the job. It was sitting down and looking at every game and going, okay, which is going to be the best for this game, and scrutinizing every single assignment, because we understood, one, we wanted to set the officials up for success, but two, that game, that championship game, meant everything to those kids, and to give them less than the product they deserve would have been a disservice to kids. And in the high school world, it's all about the student athletes. So I think that people would go, well, why do you two work so hard? And we get questioned all the time. It can't take that long to do your job. And I'm like, well, to do it well, it actually does. So I think that it would have been easy for us to press auto assign and let it roll, but we'd have to deal with the fallout from that too. So I think that when people would question our work ethic or our desire to do things the right way, it was just like, for us, it was just, that's what we need to do to get it done, because it means something to us, because it means something to those officials too. And we never wanted to sell the process short. We never wanted to sell the officials short. And we never wanted to, we never wanted our own integrity to be an issue. It was something that we believed in and something that we had a process that everybody knew, and that was how it was going to be. Even if it meant that we didn't sleep for a week, that was okay. We slept on Sunday when it was over.
For those of you that wonder why my eyes are always red, it's because I'm still trying to catch up on my sleep from my time at the NMA.
2019, it's still.
Yeah, man.
I mean, Nate and I, we got to work together during the pandemic, which was super interesting. So when you talk about everything being shut down, and Nate and I had to shift our focus to game coverage and all of that, to how do we keep officials engaged? There's nothing else going on. So the pandemic, I think we were still working 14-hour days, because we'd work all day. And then at night we would do webinars just to keep officials engaged. And I mean, it was about rules and mechanics and all of that, but the biggest point was just getting everybody together and keeping that brotherhood, sisterhood going strong. And we would, we do our presentation, or we had officials do the presentations, and then at the end, everybody would just kind of hang out, and it became kind of a social hour a little bit. But it was important that when everything else was kind of a mess, for them to understand they still had that support. They still had that group of people who had the same passion that they did. And it was fun. Like, we made a terrible situation as fun as we could. And it was something that was important to us as well, because we didn't want officials to just like flail. That was unacceptable. So it was something that and the officials in New Mexico were awesome, because we had people from every sport presenting, and they were glad to do it. So we got other people involved, so they didn't have to hear us talk all the time. But it was good. Working those couple of years during the pandemic was super interesting.
It's funny. I laugh because, all the memes of, you're muted. We learned all of that 5 days a week with, sometimes we had 600-700 people on a call. But we became a professional Zoom meeting. I think Zoom was probably on the back end recording ours and coming up with ideas on how to improve the system.
You're right, because we had it down.
We were doing it, we had 10 sports, so we were doing 2 a night, 5 days a week.
Yep. It was funny because we'd get on and we'd work all day, and then Nate and I had each try to get a workout in. So we get on the Zoom with our, just sweaty, and we're like, all right, had to work out. It was crazy. But I think that's what it takes in this business. You have to have your whole heart in it, in my opinion. Our approach may be different, but it's just something that we both believe in, and why we're best friends and all of that. So I think that's, when you can find people who match your passion for what you do, I think that's really important. But one of the things I was talking about a minute ago was mentorship, and I want to take a second to kind of give a shout out to Jerry Mark Bright. As we're recording this episode, actually, Jerry's turning 90 years old, and he's one of the godfathers of NFL officiating. And Ed and I once a month get to go up to Skokie and have brunch with Jerry and his wife, Bobby. And there was one day where we were sitting at brunch talking about, we always talk officiating. And one of the things that Jerry was talking about was how when officials retire, they get forgotten. And my heart broke. I'm talking to one of the people who, if you watched football in the 80s and early 90s, the 70s, Jerry was on your TV. He was who I grew up emulating. I mean, I remember watching him and running around the house with the touchdown signal because I saw Jerry Markbright do it. Little did I know I would meet the man and have brunch with him once a month. But we were talking about just how professional leagues, high school leagues, their officials retire, and then they're just kind of, a memory of that. And that conversation kind of spurred me to write this article that was called On the Shoulders of Giants. It appeared in Referee Magazine. And it talks about we have to do better for the people who created that foundation for us. And we understand sport will change. There's always going to be advances in how we do things and technology and the way organizations are run. We get all of that. But my first boss at the NMAA was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Dan Salzwedel. And one of the things he said to me was, if we forget the past, we forsake the future. When I started the NMAA, I was like 22 years old, and I was like, I have no idea what you're saying to me. As I got older and kind of grew into this officiating world, that made more and more sense, because I would talk to people who would just forget about who helped them get to where they are. You don't see a lot of officials associations who are really doing a lot to keep those veterans that have retired involved, or to honor them, or to give them a little bit of their due. And I think that I was so emotional when we had that conversation with Jerry. We were driving back from Illinois, and I've got my laptop, and I just start typing, and Ed's driving, and I'm just going to town on this article because it felt important, because I am big on mentorship. I am big on honoring that generation that came before us. And I think that we have to remember, those of us who are contemporaries of officiating, we have to remember how important it is to pay tribute to those individuals, however it is. Nate and I were fortunate to have Paul Laporte on the show earlier this year, and he's somebody who recruited thousands of officials into it. But having him on the show was all about honoring that legacy that he left. And so many of the guests that we've had, it's been honoring that legacy. So what I encourage you to do, if you're an official or somebody who knows officials, say thank you, reach out, see how they're doing. They love to hear from the people who they mentored. I talk a lot about that officiating immortality. If you're able to mentor someone when you've retired and those people are still doing the things that you showed them how to do, it's pretty cool, because you kind of live on forever through that next generation. So take the time to honor those people who came before us, because that's how officiating continues to live and thrive. It's hard when you hear a legend say, I feel like I've been forgotten. It's just, oof, that's something we can't have happen.
That's especially guys like Jerry, who have always given, and they left the game in a good place, and
Yes.
they left on their terms. They left, and the Debbie Downer side to all of this is that, we have far too many veterans that are leaving while throwing punches, and, I tell you, veterans, like, we want to remember you, and we want to, but how you leave also will reflect how you're remembered. And if I could, there's so many veterans that I have seen leave this game just so angry, and there's nothing to be angry about. You've had an amazing career. You changed the game. You gave back. You did all the things, but times have changed and the game has changed. And I mean, I'm still in the middle of my career, but it hurts to get up and down the floor every game. So I can't imagine, at the tail end of my career, what that's going to feel like. And I have to understand that, it's time to bring the next generation in, and that's how you're going to be remembered. And that's how, and so for all you disgruntled veterans out there, come back and give back to your associations. I can tell you that my mentor, Jack Jones, somebody that, has always been there throughout my officiating career. And he's one of the people that, I call before every big moment and every time I receive something. But that's a guy that left on his terms. It's a guy that understood that, what, it's time, the game is changing and I'm not willing to change with it. So I might as well leave on my terms and make it a positive transition. And boy, has he. I mean, he's doing some amazing things in the local high school association. I know the assigner down there is just thrilled at what him and another veteran official and Cliff Jenkins are doing. And so I use them as an example because there's so much you can give back. And trust me, these young cats, I mean, I'm in the middle of my career and they don't listen to me either, but I promise you, they hear something. There's something that you can give them. And even if they blow you off and it's like, yeah, trust me, because I've been witness to a veteran telling a newer official, our crew chief telling our U2 something this season. And they just yeah. Well, then, 5 games later, I work a game with the same individual, U2, and the crew chief goes to the pregame. Well, the U2 has something to add to the pregame, and it was everything that the crew chief prior to gave them. So they heard you, you know,
They're just too proud to admit it.
too proud to admit it at the moment. So they're listening, and I encourage you, just continue to give back and come back. Don't leave this avocation and this profession angry, because I can't imagine leaving this thing. I know I will be forgotten and I will be replaced, but the things that can't be replaced are the memories and the opportunities and everything that the zebra stripes have given me.
That and I think from an administrative side, invest in your officials and be a person of your word. And if you say you're going to do something, you need to follow through. I think that's something that I've seen a lot of. Don't be a person of words, be a person of action. And I think that pays dividends. You'll end up with officials who are very loyal to you and who will work hard for you if they know you truly support them. If you say you support them and then when push comes to shove, you don't, you're going to have a whole set of issues on your hands. So I think that my biggest lesson or my biggest kind of advice to impart would be just that. Show your officials that you care. Don't just say that you do. You have to prove it through action. I was having an exchange with one of my former officials the other day, and I said, for an officiating family to be successful, when you're in a position of leadership, you have to love them more, support them more, and do more for them. And I believe that to this day. I think that's something that we have to be willing to do as leaders, is to make sure that those officials feel that support and feel that family. Really, I think that's critical. So Nate, I'm going to turn the tables on you for a second. We're wrapping up here. So we always ask our guests, our show, we have a mission to elevate, educate, and excite. So what would you, Nate Acosta, tell our listeners to fulfill that mission?
It is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It saved my life, and without it, I definitely would not be here. And that is God's honest truth. And that is something that should excite you, is the fact that something as simple as putting on some stripes or a uniform and a whistle and running up and down a playing surface, if that doesn't excite you, then I don't know what does, because as I am trying to excite you about it, my heart's pounding. I've got goosebumps because, man, what officiating has done for me and what it has given me is a new life and a new opportunity to be successful. And that's where I want to excite and elevate, to educate, get to know your officials, communities. We're human. We're people. We're fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, uncles. We're manufacturer. We work in manufacturers. We work in schools. We work as police officers and firefighters. We're politicians. We're lawyers. We're everything that you are. We just do something else. And I ask you to get to know us, and maybe, just maybe, when you're out watching those games, they don't expect you not to yell, but I would hope that there's a level of respect with what we do. And I'm not asking you to stop yelling at us, because to me, I love that part of the game, but I am asking you to respect me and know that I did not cost your team the game. I did not intentionally cost your team the game, and I have no ill will other than to get my plays right.
That was a good answer. I like that one.
All right, flip it around. Your turn.
All right. So, our answers are similar in a sense. So for me, the exciting part and maybe the elevating part is understanding the meaning of this avocation profession to the people who do it. I say it often about myself. I'm not me without officials. I'm just not. That's the God's honest truth. I mean, I have an amazing family. I have the best parents in the world. I have an incredible sister. I have, friends that are awesome and godsons and all of this stuff. But if you stripped officiating away from me, part of me would be just dead in a way. I mean, I honestly wouldn't be who I am right now in this moment had it not been for working with officials and continuing to work with officials. If you're considering it ever, you get the best seat in the house. Like anytime you officiate any sport, you are in it. It's the best way to stay involved with something that you love, that gave something to you. to give back to your community, all of that stuff to build this community, these friends, this family, this support group that you wouldn't have had otherwise. You get a lot out of officiating. You truly do. But, the fact that you give, it's fulfilling in so many different ways. And I think if you were an athlete or are an athlete, maybe you're a former coach, maybe you're somebody who your kid has played forever and now they're graduating and you have a whole bunch of nights free because you're no longer watching them play. It's such a good way to stay close to something that you have as a passion in your heart. And I think overall our industry's done a terrible job of really selling the avocation to student athletes. Too many times it's like, okay, after high school you can play or you can coach. We don't talk about that third team that is critical to the game. Definitely give it a try. And if you don't want to, that's okay. But we're hoping that through From A to Zebra, you can develop some empathy for the people who are officiating. And like Nate said, they're your neighbors. They are people who live in your communities, who are serving your community in different ways. And now they're putting on a whistle and getting yelled at for doing their job. Just remember that if you're somebody who has a job, wouldn't it be weird to be sitting at your desk and have somebody yelling at you over your shoulder because you misspelled something in an email? I mean, that's kind of what happens in officiating. But
Dana, you'd be yelling all the time.
Yeah, I would yell a lot, but I think that that's the exciting part, is just understanding that it expands your career or your life as an athlete. As far as the education part, understand how hard officials work to do something good at my level and the high school level. These are people who are doing something good for your kids. They are taking time off of work. They are taking time away from their own families so your kids can participate. And like Nate said, yelling boo is one thing. Threatening them after the game is quite another. So just make sure that you are respectful of what they're doing. And they are absolutely not ever going to be perfect. There's never been a perfect game officiated in any sport ever, ever, ever. And it's not going to happen. And if you're a proponent of robot officials, they're not going to be perfect either, because if humans actually create those, let's not even go there. But have a little bit of empathy and have a little bit of understanding of what these people are doing. And at the high school level, understand that these are people who have entirely other jobs and they're taking time away from their lives to go do something good for your kids and your community. So that would be kind of my education piece, is understanding that human side of officiating and the passion that goes into it. Hopefully Nate and I have shared ours with you as far as why the stripes mean so much to us and why zebras are a huge part of what we do. You can't see them, but I've got a bunch of zebras that are staring at me sitting on my desk right now. Those are the things that are, look, there you go. They're everywhere. Like, it's everywhere. When people go, do you like any other colors than black and white? I'm like, no, not, gray maybe, but
well, maybe one of the 10 soccer colors that they wear, but it's...
Yeah, exactly. Maybe one of those.
When they're wearing them.
That's awesome. Well, this has been fun. It's been good to just chat with Nate and hopefully share our story and the premise behind this podcast. And as we wrap up season 1 and get ready for season 2, which starts on April 5th, we hope you'll join us. If you have friends that aren't listening, get them to listen. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And we'd love to hear your feedback at any time that you feel like you'd like to give us some ideas. We're all ears. Just much like when we were in the state office together, we're always open to suggestions. And if we can get a guest that you're looking for, we'll get them on. Just let us know who that is, and we'll work to make that happen. So thank you for joining us for season 1, and we hope that you'll join us for season 2 and beyond.
Be sure to hit that like button, follow, subscribe, and also catch From A to Zebra on Instagram at from_A_2_zebra, Facebook From A to Zebra Podcast, and on X at From A to Zebra.